You might only think that legal restrictions on the freedom of speech and expression is only found in countries like China or Saudi Arabia. In reality, plenty of Western countries have legal restrictions on the freedom of speech and expression too. Take Canada as an example. In the Canadian Charter, it's written that there's reasonable limitations to free speech and expression as long as you can justify it under a court of law. As you can imagine, over the years, what's deemed as reasonable limitations has expanded to things like hate speech. A number of cases have traveled to the Canadian Supreme Court, like James Keestra in 1982, who got charged for teaching anti-Semitism to his students at his grade school, or Bill Whatcott, who got charged in the early 2000s for handing out flyers that labeled homosexuals as sodomites. In each of these cases, no one was harmed, no clear call to violence occurred, yet these men were charged anyways for simply holding beliefs and expressing themselves. Yes, these beliefs are pernicious. Yes, most people can morally disagree with this type of speech. It's not something that is accepted in normal society or polite society. However, for the Canadian government to legislate against speech, even hate speech, to legally punish people for sharing bad ideas, come on now, Canada. Laws restricting free speech and expression are not just in Canada, it's also found in Europe. Take Germany as an example. In Germany, according to Article 5 of the Basic Law of the Federal German Republic, there are reasonable limitations to free speech. For example, no one is allowed denying the Holocaust. In fact, not just in Germany, but in 14 European countries, it's illegal to deny the Holocaust. Germany takes a step further than most countries, though. According to the law of some German states, 16 in total, there are restrictions on the free press. So not only can't those in the public express hate speech or Holocaust denial, but also people in the press can't say what they want to say. Obviously, in Germany's case, they're so afraid of their Nazi past that they restrict the freedom of speech and the free press, which ironically is what the Nazis did. These types of laws are not only found in Canada and Germany, but also all throughout Europe. And these types of laws have unintended consequences. The first unintended consequence is that these types of laws has a chilling effect. These types of laws have the ability to censor people, not just hate speech itself, but other forms of speech. Think of it this way. If you can't express hate speech, for example, so expressing speech that can be deemed as hateful by others, then does that also mean that you can't criticize or generalize people of different races or creed? There's a thin line between censoring Islamophobia versus censoring legitimate criticism of Islam and Muslims, and on that point, there's a lot to criticize about the Islamic world. Where does the government draw the distinction? As we've seen in motions like 103 making its way through Canadian Parliament, censoring vague and quite frankly disingenuous concepts like Islamophobia can easily spark a chilling effect in Canada, where I can get arrested for saying Islam is one of the most violent religious ideologies on the planet, which it certainly unquestionably is. The second unintended consequence of censoring speech, especially hate speech, is that these ideas, regardless of whether or not they're morally pernicious, when they are unchallenged, they can grow stronger, not only because these ideas start to go to the underground and it gets more popular that way, but also because people who hold these ideas start to see themselves as a victim of the government. And in this case, they have a point. Sunlight is the biggest disinfectant, but something's absolutely wrong when government enforces that disinfectant. When countries send their own citizens to prison over speech code violations, we're not better off than China or Saudi Arabia in that respect. We just unjustly punish people for different reasons. Why, for one, I'm getting tired of the freedom of speech and expression being legally limited even for hate speech. I'm Jay Feza from the Rebel.media. If you believe in the freedom of speech and expression for every idea and every one, like and subscribe to the Rebel.media.